Hi everyone, I hope you are doing well. First off, I want to say I'm sorry I have not been recording as many videos as I used to just because I'm honoring my own inner guidance at this time and I feel like I needed to take a bit of a pause. I am getting a lot of intuitive hits on things I really want to talk about, come back on camera with, but I don't feel like I have the green light for that just yet. So as soon as I can, I might be popping out a couple of different videos at the same time, but that's just not the time for me right now. Nevertheless, this is a video I've been wanting to record for some time, but just haven't gotten around to it. And so today's message is kind of dedicated to really answering the question of whether or not twin flames are a single soul. This claim comes up a lot in the twin flame community, so I want to share my own intuitive insights on this one, what I got with this, and also answer some subsequent questions that come with really accepting this concept. And so hopefully that will help you on your own journey, really understanding where this comes from, what it's really referring to, and then answer some other questions that may be popping up in your head with it. So for starters, I would like to say that this is once again one of those questions that I've happened to ask my higher self, and the intuitive hit and flash of insight that I got in regards to this was I kind of saw a ray of light descending down to the 3D realm, and as that happens, that single ray of light split into two. And that was my response to the question of, are twin flames a single soul? So based on that insight, I would like to say yes. It's kind of weird to really accept a single soul because we know that each body has their own soul. So what we're really talking about here is, if we take a look at, I come from Eastern philosophy, mysticism, but this concept of having a soul, I don't know if you've ever heard of higher self, over soul. This comes from modern metaphysics, but the way you kind of want to understand it is when we talk about the divine being this single field, undivided field of awareness. Kind of think of the sky. It's probably the best representation I could think of, or the ocean. If you look at the sky, it's like, where does it begin? Where does it end? You can't quite answer that. It's just this open vastness. So think of the divine as this open field, of awareness. And when we talk about us as being individual souls, think of, God manifesting himself, and himself isn't really the right term, but itself, we can say, down into the physical form. We come down as these individual souls. Now, in between that is what we could call an oversoul, your higher self, the all-knowing self. Prior to, it still has this sort of an individuality that knows a lot, but is part of the unity. But it's almost like a wave in the ocean. But when you go back to your origin, when you go back to the divine, then everything is consumed by that vastness, that undivided field of awareness, that formless field of awareness, right? When you talk about the actual divine, the most high, there is no form to the divine. And if you're talking about any sort of a form, then that's not the most high. Hopefully that kind of is helpful. So think of you as an individual soul coming down from that vastness, taking on a physical form in the 3D. And somewhere along that, that soul descending down from that field takes a split and actually manifests itself into two beings, one being the masculine as the divine masculine and the divine feminine. Now, I talk about the design a lot in my videos because it's very important, and I can't stress this enough, for twin flames to really understand this is not a romantic journey. The union that everybody is chasing and is after is just what ends up happening when you end up completing your awakening journey, right? just think of these two souls that have split from this single ray of light will eventually come back together as that inner work is done, as that healing work is done, as you start to move towards that formlessness, right? That unity consciousness and beyond. And so that's really what we're talking about here. So it's not that, you don't have your own individual soul. You do, and your twin has their own individual soul. But what it's really referring to here is it's almost like cloning, taking a single soul, taking the properties of that soul and putting it on in the other person. That's what's really happening here. And this is why you two work like magnets. When the feminine energy, regardless of if you're the male or the female, whoever is leading in this connection, and I'm talking about the chaser, when the chaser finally learns that they need to, alchemize this whole journey by really going within, they start to do the inner work, they start to ascend to those higher states of consciousness, and you start to reach unity consciousness. Well, that other half of you has to be magnetized in back to you, right? If you keep chasing them on the outside, then you're just stuck in the physical 3D realm. This is why this is an awakening journey. This is why this is a spiritual journey. It's not a romantic relationship. If it was just a romantic relationship, then you would have a soulmate. You would have somebody that, you meet once upon a time in your lifetime, you fall in love, and the end, right? Until the end of your days, or however long that relationship is meant to last. Just because you're a soulmate doesn't mean you're together forever. Nevertheless, now when we talk about twin flames, there is the alchemical process. You are healing yourself, you are breaking curses, you are clearing karma, you're doing all of that, because that, if you take a look at mysticism, you take a look at spirituality, this journey is no different. You have to achieve everything you have to as a spiritual seeker if you want to know the divine, and you're doing that exact same thing here. It's just you're doing it to come into union, most of you anyway, when you are starting off to say, what do I need to do? I just want my twin back. I'm so desperate to have my twin back. You're willing to do anything to, just have that twin. And as you move along this journey, you realize, this isn't even, this is not what I thought it was. But nevertheless, you're transformed in the process. So I hope this kind of brings you some clarity around the whole idea of the same soul. That's how it's functioning. Now, as I say this, some people may think to themselves, but wait a second, why then do twin flames have this age difference? Why are twin flames sometimes a 20-year-old is falling in love with a 40-year-old and they can't, stay apart? Well, the twin flame journey, first off, let me kind of tackle the question around the age difference. So when we are dealing with the 3D, we are fixated on linear time, right? To us, there is a past that's gone, there is a current present, and there's a future that's yet to come, whether it's a 1 second away, 2 days away, 5 days away. We are stuck in the idea of linear time. When you step onto an ascension journey, you start to go inward. You start to recognize that there is no such thing as linear time. This is why, spiritual teachers, mystics, have always asked us to focus on the present moment, because at a higher dimension, a higher states of consciousness, you come to recognize that everything is unfolding in the eternal now. Everything is unfolding in the present moment. It's very hard to conceptualize this, but once you go within, once you reach those levels of consciousness, it becomes a very natural thing to really understand. Nevertheless, in terms of the age gap, now when you come down to the 3D and that split happens between the masculine and feminine, right? As I was kind of mentioning that I had an intuitive insight on. You have to imagine that because everything is unfolding in the eternal now, the present moment, what you end up getting is all of these different timelines occurring at the same time. So when you have that split between the masculine and the feminine, it ends up landing on different timelines. It's, again, really hard to understand this, from your 3D self, but what you end up getting is the masculine and feminine having that age gap depending on what timeline they're really manifesting themselves in. So I don't know if that's clear enough or not, but that's the best way I can kind of explain it. And so, your activation with your twin flame, whether it's in person, online, over the phone, however this, kind of manifests itself, there was a lot taking place, the divine orchestration of really bringing you together to be activated was critical and took a lot of work to make it happen, because that was the point that you intersected. But then because you are two unhealed parts, right? Because if you were healed, you wouldn't be distorted, you wouldn't be separated, you wouldn't be, no longer veiled by the physical 3D reality, forgetting what your true nature is, which is being one with the divine at some level. So coming down to the 3D, you totally have amnesia. You forget that, you are part of the eternal divine, and you end up thinking that you are your form. Now that takes you to your spiritual journey then, which is remembering what your true eternal self is, right? That's what your spiritual journey is shedding those layers, those identities, those beliefs that make you think that you are your form, and brings you closer to, it takes some time to get there, but you are essentially on your path then. Once you realize the truth is within, you are going on an ascension journey to really understand who you are, what is your true nature. And that is when you discover, okay, I am one with everything. I am actually the only thing manifesting itself throughout the cosmos, throughout the universe, etc. So hopefully that is kind of helpful. The next part of this that I kind of want to answer is the duplication and the cloning that I'm talking about that, really happens. This is also why when you take a look at your twin, you meet your twin, whether there's distance or not, you have what we call a soul recognition, where you instantaneously look at this individual and you say, that's me. Now, if this has not happened to you, I would highly doubt you're on a twin flame journey. You should be able to come across your twin and really see parts of yourself in that individual. That is what your soul recognition is. You are meant to be mirrors of each other, that really come together and say, oh my God, that's me in another body. How is that possible? Now, with that being said, I want to say, your catalyst. I talk a lot about the catalyst as well on my channel. And essentially, a catalyst is just a member of your soul family also. Very similar to your twin, but not exactly your twin. But they have the capacity to come at various points. It could be at the beginning, middle, closer to the end before union, where a catalyst can really come in, get you to do the work that's required to get you to union. So do not get stuck on this journey with the labels. That is why, regardless of if you are dealing with your twin at this time or a catalyst, the focus is never them. The focus is you. The focus is your own inward journey. The purpose of your twin or the catalyst is simply to hammer home the point that you need to be doing your own inner work. It's to get you, to awaken you, to shake you, to get you to do whatever it's going to take for you to do the inner work. And especially I'm talking to the feminine energy when I talk about this, because it is the feminine energy that is leading in this connection. Whether you are the male or the female does not matter, but you are the one that needs to do that inner work so that union can really take place. So just going back again to that cloning aspect of, the twins, if you can see your twin or, have some form of connection with your twin, you should be able to identify yourself. You may not be able to label exactly what it is, but there should be some form of recognition of, holy cow, that's me in another body. Because that's essentially what it is. And if you dive deeper into the lives of twins, you will find that throughout their lives they have a lot of similarities. This could be same family dynamics. This could be, they are working on the same street for years, not running into each other. Having the same sorts of interests and hobbies, having, siblings with the same birthdays. It's almost like they are leading these parallel lives, but not really intersecting until they're meant to. So again, hopefully this is helpful to kind of clarify why this phenomenon really takes place the way it does. And I give it no more credit than the fact that this is a very unique design to really get you on to your ascension journey. Unfortunately, people aren't looking that way fast enough, but the sooner you can get onto that, everything else will unfold and union will naturally, because it's a byproduct of the journey, will take place. And I say that now with this visual, hopefully, that I've been able to kind of feed you with. Just think about that individualized soul, which you are, that higher self, which is your oversoul, and then, merging back with the divine being your highest level. So when this split is taking place, right, ultimately, if you're on your ascension journey, you're moving back upwards towards your oversoul to connect with your higher self and beyond. And as you do that, you're naturally magnetizing this other part of you back in. So union is going to happen regardless. Now, just the tricky part, I always say this, is recognizing, is it your twin or the catalyst you're dealing with? You do not need to cling to that individual, because this journey is about detachment, regardless of who you're dealing with. Your spiritual journey is always about detachment. Just to kind of be clear about what I'm talking about with detachment, this is a very prevalent concept that is talked about in mysticism and spirituality, which is that in the physical form, through your five senses, you have your attention focused outwards. As long as you are focused outside of yourself, you can never really go home to yourself within. So the idea of detachment here is to say, I kind of don't need anything outside of me. Everything I need is within me. So you take that attention, you take that energy, you take that focus, you bring that back home to yourself. And as you do that, you naturally start falling away from anything that is no longer aligned with you. When you tap into your spiritual higher nature, naturally, little things outside of you are no longer going to bring you the pleasure, because there's greater treasures within. So those are just going to naturally fall away. It's kind of the analogy in mysticism and spirituality always given to you is an onion. You have layers and layers of, like an onion, that you are wearing in the physical form. And the remembrance journey to remember your true eternal nature is just one by one peeling back those layers that no longer can hold you back until you are, aware of your true self. So just remember, as long as you keep clinging to the outside world, union cannot take place. And for all you know, if you're clinging to what you think is your twin, that might actually just be a doppelganger, and really you haven't even met your true divine counterpart yet. That is supposed to be who you're supposed to be in union with on this journey. So again, gather your focus away from that twin, detach who you think your twin is, focus on your inward journey, and lo and behold, at some point in time, you will come into union. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope this was helpful. God bless.